Stasia's been a guest on the podcast before, but so I'll give her a quick kind of, she's the amazing, all-seeing, all-knowing Oz of people analytics research and analyst world. Dani, however, you are the all-knowing, all-seeing Oz, but not about people analytics. Can you tell us really quickly where your research specialty is and what gets you excited about what's going on right now?
Yeah, I cover a couple of areas. I cover learning and development or employee development. I cover skills and then sort of how talent moves within an organization. And so those are the things that I cover.
Are you ready to put forward an AI operating model for HR yet? Have you thought about it? If so, what would it look like?
No, because AI is a tool that enables you to do a whole bunch of other things in different ways than you did before. Full stop.
It's an enabler. It's not a thing.
Right? Like it's basically using the career advice that my dad gave me when I was 18, is what that paper says. If you measure your success objectively with promotions, etc.
Well, let me ask you guys. So do you think this is going to be valid in 3 years? Do you think AI is going to mess that up? That's not what you know until you know.
It's a good question. Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people analytics podcast with your host, Cole Napper, and today's guests, Stacia Garr and Dani Johnson, both co-founders and principal analysts at RedThread Research. Hey, Directionally Correct fans, this podcast is dedicated to you to help democratize people intelligence for the world of work. If you're looking to support the podcast, please make sure to listen weekly, subscribe to the Directionally Correct Substack newsletter, sign up for the Data-Driven HR Academy at datadrivenhracademy.com, purchase Cole's book, People Analytics, or check out everything else at colenapper.com. Before we get into it, a quick word about HR Bench, the company powering this podcast. You know, when we all started in people analytics, we wanted to do strategic work, building predictive models, workforce planning, advising the C-suite, and most of all, quantifying the impact for the business. Instead, we spend months building dashboards and reports that should already exist. HR Bench eliminates that entire phase. Your HRIS connects, your metrics calculate, your benchmarks populate. This is not novel. This is day one, not quarter two. That means skipping straight to prescriptive analysis, storytelling, and taking action for the business. Want to learn more? Book a demo at hrbench.com/directionallycorrect. Find out more about the company powering this podcast and building the future of people intelligence. As always, all opinions are our own, and thanks for being a listener. Can we geek out at like inside baseball on podcasts for a second? Because you guys have the popular Workplace Stories podcast. Actually, can I compliment you really quick? So obviously I have my own podcast and I talk a lot for a living. And I even tabulated, I think I've been on like a guest on like something like 50 podcasts in like the last 3 years. So you guys, the first time I was on your podcast was the most positive reach outs, I guess I should say, after an episode I've ever had. And so I wanted to compliment you. RedThread, Workplace Stories, amazing podcast. You should be listening to it. But do you guys have any like tips and tricks or things that you've learned throughout the process of how to run a good podcast? Because I don't care if our listeners care about this at all. I care. And so what have you learned through doing this for, I don't know how many years you've been doing it?
Well, this will probably come as no surprise to anybody that knows me. But process is a really big deal to us in our podcast. We started out not knowing what we were doing, and it took a lot of effort and time and all the things. And once we got things into a groove with a process and with a standard recording time and all those things, it just streamlined it really well. I think the other thing is just guests make the biggest difference. And it's not just what they know, it's what kind of energy they can bring to the conversation, as I'm sure you know. But those are my two big learnings. I'm interested in what Stacia's learned.
I think people who take a slightly different take on things and are open to back and forth and us challenging them and are totally comfortable going off script, because we send a lovely set of questions beforehand, which are suggestive. And then we get about, suggestions. Yeah. Well, maybe suggestive too. They don't know what's on them.
True.
But we get about usually into question 3, maybe 4. Maybe. And then we're just like, and we want to talk about this other thing because that was interesting. And I think having guests who can go with the flow and are not so concerned with saying the right thing every moment, who relax into the fact that we can edit it. I think those are all really important for it feeling authentic and energized and going in places that are unexpected, because quite honestly, it's unexpected to us too. We just go.
I love that you said that, because definitely you guys push back more than most podcasts. I actually have a rule on here that Cole doesn't argue with the guests because of some bad early experiences on the podcast. So you will get very little pushback from me today. But what was fun about doing yours is what I think a lot of people who are listeners don't realize about me is how much I like to debate. Yeah. I just don't do it in the public forums because it just never works out very well. But I think you guys are pros at it. So really well done in that respect.
Thank you.
Stasia's been a guest on the podcast before, but so I'll give her a quick kind of, she's the amazing, all-seeing, all-knowing Oz of people analytics research and analyst world. Dani, however, you are the all-knowing, all-seeing Oz, but not about people analytics. Can you tell us really quickly where your research specialty is and what gets you excited about what's going on right now?
Yeah, I cover a couple of areas. I cover learning and development, or employee development. I cover skills, and then sort of how talent moves within an organization. And so those are the things that I cover. It's a really exciting time to talk about all of those things, because we are finding more and more that they intersect really nicely with people analytics and data within organizations.
Yeah, data is definitely at the root of a lot of those things. I wanted to go through potentially today. Again, we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, but you guys have published some really cool research lately, which you did not send over. So I had to find what I think are some screenshots of what are going on here. But I wanted to start with the mega trends that you guys put out at the end of last year. I think they're extremely relevant. I'll just hit on all 5 really quickly, and then you can come over and just give color to any of them that, you feel, motivated to talk about. But the 5 megatrends are increased geopolitical disruption, more growth, less people focus, power struggles continuing, increasing population and skills mismatch, and more AI use cases, fewer experiments. So this has had a few months to age now. What has been like the thing that was the biggest reaction from this research? Because I thought it was amazing. And Stacia, you can go first.
So I'm going to go first because that's actually last year's megatrends.
Well, this is what you get for not sending.
I know. So let's handle this way. Let's actually, because we haven't had a chance to do this, let's talk about what we got right on that. Because there's a lot, there's enough that's right that you thought it was this year's, which is awesome. But we have a different perspective on what's happening for 26. So are you okay with just pivot that way?
I told Dani before we started, this is you guys' podcast. We can talk about whatever you want. So have at it.
Okay. All right. So let's, can we pop that thing back up? Because, they're not the current ones.
We actually can't, because when you said it was wrong, I deleted it.
Oh!
And now I'd have to go find it again, which is like embarrassing. But
okay, so I think I can remember.
You talk and I'll go find it. How about that?
All right, it was geopolitical unrest.
Yep.
It was focusing on the bottom line, or growth only.
Yep, growth over people.
Growth over people. It was AI experimentation. Sorry, moving away from experimentation and toward pilots and integration into organizations.
Power struggles continue.
Power struggles continue. And then what was the last one?
Increasing population skills mismatch. I've
there it is.
On ours. So, all right. So let's grade ourselves, Dani. What do you think?
Well, I think we got the geopolitical unrest thing right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt about that one. I would also say that we've got the focus on growth, right? Just kind of based on what we're seeing with organizations laying people off and focusing on growth, bottom line, and moving forward.
Yep, I 100% agree. Yep. Power struggles continue?
I think they do. I think employees have less power and continue to have less power, at least in this market. But I think they are still continuing. There's still that conversation going on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the one thing though is it's yes, that's the case, but a little bit the organization's won, management won. Like I don't know. I mean, it was a struggle at the time, and I feel like with the rebalancing of economics and the focus on growth over people, and now AI being used as a fear driver, I think it's not a struggle.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the things that you guys are seeing at this moment that you feel like are going to age well in 2027 in terms of the big trends that you have seen in the HR space? And obviously it's not just about the HR space because you're looking at things through a very macro lens.
Yeah. So I think there are a few things. Like if we think about what the mega trends are for this year, a couple things. One is this idea of air. What do we call it? AI becoming the air we breathe. And so our prediction, and what's always interesting is probably in January, it always feels a little bit out there. And then often by like November, we're like, obviously that's what was going to happen. So our prediction is that as we get to work through this year, the organizations, AI is going to become so ubiquitous that we're not going to be talking about it as much about the separate tool, the separate thing over here, but much more about just like, this is how we operate and think about the world. And that I think is going to continue in 27.
I think we predicted authenticity becoming a really big thing in 2026 as well. And I think we're seeing that. Just the amount of money being spent on authentication tools and security and those types of things, as well as at least within the areas that I cover, we're having lots of conversations about the authenticity of people. And if we take the people out of things and create everything with a machine, does it have as much value? Coaching being one of those things. And so how authenticity as, the humans as authentic, I think is another thing that is going to continue through 2026.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked about too with that authenticity question is this idea that if people are using AI to do all these things, do we start to have less expertise? We called it the concept of a hollowed out expert, where you would expect because somebody wrote something or was able to speak to something using AI that they actually know something, but maybe they don't. Maybe it was all just from the AI. So that was another one. Decline of interdependence was a third one. And this is one where it, in some ways ties back to that geopolitical disruption, but it takes it to beyond disruption to the so what, which is, as we think about, for instance, data centers being distributed across different geographies and rules around AI in particular saying these people here can do these things and these other people here can't do these things. And then in some instances, when you then blow up the data centers, it just is creating a very uneven experience. And so that is something that HR leaders are going to have to manage, both from like who's coming into the organization, how we're getting them up to speed and integrating the organizational culture. What does that employee experience actually look like? And how does that differ across different areas? And what is the access to tools and information? How does that change?
Do you know the answers to any of those questions, or do we just get at positing the questions themselves?
Well, you have to read the research.
Nice plug. Well done. Very subtle.
Let's hit just the last two real quick, and then we'll go on. So the third one or the fourth one that we really care about, obviously, is data as strategic infrastructure. So it being essential to everything. So I'm not going to posit more on that. And then the final one was the rise of work ecosystems. Dani, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, we're seeing productivity. We have figured out recently that productivity isn't necessarily tied to people. And part of that is because of the way things are being structured, right? So we're using a lot more AI, and organizations are trying to figure out where the people fit in and where the AI fits in. But the other thing that we're seeing is fewer W-2 employees and a lot more contractors. And so people are still doing the work in a system, but they don't necessarily belong to that system full time. And so this idea of a work system that includes the robots and the people outside the organization and the people inside of the organization is something that we're seeing. And obviously that has huge repercussions for contextual learning and making sure that the system works, and the meaning of an organization itself. Why does it exist if we can just break everything down to task level? And so that's another thing we're looking at.
Yeah. And you guys have coined this phrase, the MSAP. So
we have, yes, the multi-source analysis platform. I'm the only one who used it. We tried to change it, but then I couldn't find another term. So if you've got one, Cole, throw it over here.
Well, funny enough, you would be surprised at the number of discussions that I've had privately about what to call all this stuff together, because there is no good name.
Yep.
Every name, there have been good names, and then they get ruined by marketers. And so then you have to go with something esoteric like multi-source analysis platform, because it's just so bad for marketing purposes that no one's ever going to use it. So then but it is very clear. It's a multi-source analysis platform, which all of the things that you just mentioned are fit within that definition. I have another research report, which I'm not going to pull up because apparently it might be wrong, where you guys have looked into the research on MSAP, so these platforms and how this data is used. What are some of the key things that you have seen in the market for some of this technology that's going on in the 2025, 2026 timeframe?
Yeah, well, so to be clear, kind of these platforms are, as you said, platforms that bring together data from a variety of sources and then are used to understand it, make analytical decisions, et cetera. The common ones in the market are like a Visier or a Cruncher. But for this year's study, which is live right now, the survey's out right now, everyone says, I'm one of these. And I'm like, are you really? So that's kind of an interesting conversation, because what the fundamental shift is everyone is recognizing that, just your engagement data is not enough. Just, these individual streams of data are not enough. And yet they often lack the capability, capacity, team, insights, whatever, to build an in-house, large-scale data warehouse, data lake house, whatever you want to call it, that will both manage all the different data streams, will integrate them, harmonize them, orchestrate them, govern them, and then push them out to all the right places. So people are turning to some of these solutions to try to at least begin to get to some of their answers, but there's kind of inherent challenges in them. That said, MSAPs have been, after employee experience, have been the second fastest growing space across the last few years, as you would expect. I'll be really interested to see what we see for 2025. Like I said, we're collecting data right now, but it's a space that is going to grow ever more critical. And I think that as people begin to recognize where those combined data can then be plugged into some of their planning processes in particular, we're going to see a change in what an MSAP actually is.
Well, you walked into, so one of the things people learn about me is questions I don't like answering myself. I ask the guests so they can answer it for me. And you walked into answering one of the questions that I hate answering, which is, what is people analytics? Can you, and before I go into that, a lot of the MSAP users and MSAP vendors are listening to this podcast. Go out and take the survey. RedThread has the best data in this space. There is no number two. So please go. They're investing in this community, invest back in them. But what constitutes an MSAP? Like, what makes it inbounds, and then what makes it out of bounds?
So in general, with people analytics, we see that people analytics technology is analytics technology that is designed for people data. Because you could say, all right, well, like, isn't Snowflake a people analytics technology? Isn't blah, blah, blah. And so as we have defined it, because you got to draw a line somewhere, that's what it is. And so there are a whole bunch of different use cases. I think we've got 6 or 7 different categories within people analytics tech broadly. We've got just to list some of them: strategic workforce planning. We've got labor market intelligence. We've got MSAPs. We've got employee experience engagement. We've got organizational network analysis. We've got HCM analytics, which actually looks and feels a bit different than some of the others. Anyway, point being, they're all targeted at people data primarily, with somebody who cares about what's happening with people as the primary output, if you will. Those who have the broader use case, Power BI, Splat, Snowflake, etc., those we have not included, not because we don't think people are using them, but just because they're not being marketed and sold that way.
Well, I want to bring Dani into this because I feel like you can't even go through a podcast nowadays without talking about some of this stuff. So we're not going to talk a ton about AI today. And I was trying not to talk about some of this stuff, but skills and tasks, where do they play a role in this? And how do they play a role in contextualizing work and the whole AI situation as well?
I mean, that's the question, right? That's what everyone's trying to figure out right now. In the last year, we've seen the conversation switch from skills to tasks. Like it's in some ways easier to understand the type of work that needs to be done than quantify the skills that people have in an organization. Also with AI, Stacia sort of coined this phrase or this idea, but tasks is the connector between skills and work. So if you can understand the tasks that need to be done, you can understand what people need to do, and then what the AI can do, and then you have a better understanding of how your entire system should work. So I think it comes into it because all of those are data generating or data absorbing pieces that exist in these MSAPs, or should exist in these MSAPs, to understand what's going on within the organization. So it used to be, I don't want to say it's ever been simple, because it hasn't, but we have more data streams than we've had in a really long time to understand where people are and what they do. Stacia's talked about the technology that it's itself that does it, the MSAP, but all of the people technology that we have and that we study feeds into those and provides data and streams to help understand what's actually going on in an organization and how you should make decisions off of it.
Yeah, I think I would like to add there, we actually just published last week a skills data architecture report, which is my case for why RedThread will remain relevant in this world of AI research, which is, I can tell you, no LLM is writing a report on skills data architecture at that level of detail. But what I think is important to remember about all this stuff is that it's all just data, right? It's all data that you are using to make decisions about people and the work that they do. And a lot of folks like to get themselves wrapped around the axle of like a skills-based organization, blah, blah, blah. We don't even use that term internally. We're like, you got skills data, you might have task data, you're going to have to combine it, you're going to have to make some decisions with it. You also, and this is, I'm going to steal Dani's point and then let her take it, but maybe the tasks that we are looking at are the wrong ones, because the AI is going to fundamentally do a lot of these things wrong. So maybe we should even just be looking at the outcomes we're trying to drive, and then let the AI figure out what it can do best. I don't know, but I don't know that we've got the right answer fully.
Do you have any reaction to that though, Dani?
I mean, I think Stacia's right. Stacia and I don't agree on everything, which is one of the reasons people listen to us. But this is one thing that we've sort of triangulated on over the last few years. It is what it is. Skills is data, and so much of the streams that are coming out of these other things that are also data, and we should be looking at all of them to figure out what's going on. The task piece is interesting because this is one of the things where we have been triangulating quite a bit. I don't know that I see a lot of value in identifying all the tasks associated with doing a piece of work, because they are changing so fast, and because AI can change them so fast. And so just replicating what we're currently doing by understanding the tasks that are currently being done and then getting AI to do them seems short-sighted, when we could just jump to the end and maybe fix the system, because a lot of times they're band-aided together because of internal constraints anyway.
React to these two competing notions for a second. One is, I hear often, you won't lose or some kind of variation of this, like, you won't lose your job to AI, you'll lose your job to somebody who's using AI, right? And then the second notion is, I listen to a lot of stuff about what's going on with startups in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley startup is pitching themselves and they say, we're replacing lawyers, we're replacing doctors, we're replacing an insert profession or occupation here wholesale.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two things that are going on simultaneously, and who's right and who's marketing?
So we don't reconcile it. We believe the first one, AI is going to replace jobs. Just the end. It is going to replace jobs. It's already replacing jobs. Whether it's the right move to replace jobs, that's another question. We're seeing, we had a conversation with a bunch of CLOs last week, CHROs last week, and one of the questions that came out of that was, all right, if we do figure out AI and we are able to replace some of the systems and workflows, what do we do with the people? How do we redeploy the people? And so, and it's really interesting. The news from IBM came out, I think it was this week, that said that they were going to hire 3 times the number of entry-level workers that could be replaced by AI. And so they're taking a different tact on it. So we're seeing organizations sort of split. I talked to an organization last night as well that was like, yeah, AI is important and it can hurry us up, but we use that work for developing people. We use that frontline work or the initial work for developing people. And so how can I create a system where AI does the work, but prompts the person to learn as AI is doing the work so that they understand the context in which is working. And so we're seeing lots of organizations sort of hone in on, all right, let's help the people do the people things better than they have before. But we also see the other side. We definitely see Silicon Valley laying off, hundreds of people. L&D departments across the globe have been decimated for this very thing. I think it's short-sighted. I think we're going to start seeing hiring back in a year or so. We don't try and reconcile them. It's taking jobs, and what do we do with the people, and how do we make it better for everybody on the other side?
I think a couple things I would add. One is AI is never responsible. You cannot hold AI responsible for a decision or an action or the like. And so that one person, $1 billion firm, like, no. You ultimately, even as I look at our tiny firm, right? Like, we've got people kind of in each of the little areas. Like, do we have to build them out more? Don't know. But like, we need someone to push the buttons, to make the thing go, to do the thing, to be ultimately responsible for the decisions we make. And that exists across organizations writ large. So I think that's one point. The second point is that I don't believe, I'm in a slightly different place than Dani, I think. I don't believe that we are going to pay people to learn. We've not done it at scale for a very long time, if you think back. And I know she's a learning person, but that's just my perspective. But you think about apprenticeships and the like, we haven't done that. What I think...
but it's coming back.
I know they're coming back, but I don't know that it's going to happen at the scale. Like, we're talking about, like, removing the bottom rung of the employment ladder, right? Like, are we going to do it for the entire bottom rung of the employment ladder? Like, my opinion is I don't think so. What I think is going to happen is we're going to figure out that the judgment that we need to teach people is different than what we needed to teach them before. And then we'll figure out how to teach them that judgment, not the judgment that the 3 of us, when we started working, were taught were the things that we needed to know. That's my hypothesis. I just don't know.
I mean, I see your point, but I don't know that I buy it. Like, I think by nature, we just learn on a job. And I think the context, I mean, we use the example all the time of cleaning a database, right? So do we need anybody to clean a database anymore? No, we absolutely do not. Does it get you familiar with the data and help you understand what's going to happen and what doesn't make sense when some data gets kicked out? Yeah, it absolutely does. And so if we take that out, it's not just a judgment call. It's actually providing context and helping people understand the types of judgment they're going to need because they're looking at the thing. So I think there's a real need to figure out that problem. Like, how do we bring people in? And I mean, for very large, huge organizations, I can see you saying exactly what you did, which is, yeah, we're not going to get rid of all of that work. But in law firms or in consulting firms or some of those types of things, a lot of that work will go away. And how do we make sure that people have the right skills to make the judgments we need them to make with AI moving forward?
Yeah. I want to pull you back into this call because we're doing what we do on our podcast, which is we just go
which is argue. Yeah, and you look so happy that we are.
But you wrote a piece with someone. I think that came out in the last couple of days, talking about like what did we talk about before AI, and talking about like what's the same and what's different and all the rest of that. And in that, you had, I think, a really good insight, which is that analysis, which is what we're basically talking about here, the price of that drops almost to zero, but the cost of doing something, of actually taking action, remains the same by and large. And so, to your whole setup here, what will the world look like? It'll probably be a whole lot more doers. I think it's going to be a lot more people who are not stuck in analysis paralysis, like just looking at the stuff, but who are like, all right, we have to go build that program to make work better, as opposed to just talk about it.
That's, I think I proposed the Inquisitor and the change agent model in 2022, like right when AI came out, which talked about it's basically going to be people asking the right questions, i.e. the Inquisitors, and the change agents who are the doers, to your point, that are going out and doing it, because the analysis step is going to collapse to zero, which it's almost there. So I agree. Well done. No debate. I do have a question that I think probably it's come up a few times recently on the podcast, but many more times off the podcast. And I've thought about writing about it, decided not to do it. I suspect you guys have thought about it as well. I don't know for a fact. Are you ready to put forward an AI operating model for HR yet? Have you thought about it? If so, what would it look like?
No, because AI is a tool that enables you to do a whole bunch of other things in different ways than you did before. Full stop.
It's an enabler. It's not a thing.
There might be an AI strategy to get you to figure out how to adjust your HR operating model. But I don't even know what that is. Like literally, I don't even know what that is. So we're working on a report, which we've got the framework, but the report's not written. So don't go look for it. It's another 3 weeks out at least.
Don't worry, I won't find it if I look.
That's not true. The other one, that report is actually coming out next week. So you were just a little early. That's why you couldn't find it.
Okay.
But this HR framework, actually, it came out of a discussion that Dani and I had, which was we're trying to talk about how AI is going to change HR, but we don't know. Like, we don't know what all the pieces of HR even are. So, like, because there's just so, we're all siloed in these different areas. So anyway, we've developed this HR framework and the point of it is to look at, okay, what's going to stay the same and what could change or be accelerated, done differently, whatever. And I think the way that we've anchored it is around not necessarily existing COEs or any of the rest of that, but around what are the outcomes that a function that's responsible for enabling people in work, what are those outcomes that they need to do? And then we can figure out how AI changes it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I may take issue with it, but I'll withhold that.
No. Tell us. No. You can violate your rule with us. We're fine with it.
All right, it's just us. Nobody else is listening right now.
Nobody else listening.
That's good. One thing that I think I think your logic is completely sound, and that's why it won't work. Because a lot of what goes on in HR is about what is the narrative that we can sell to the HR function itself, but also to the business about how we're leading transformation, right? And one of the ways that they do that is through operating models, maturity models, workforce transformation models, and they latch onto something that McKinsey builds or Deloitte builds or whoever is selling the new hot thing, and HR rallies all of its resources behind that and then goes and undergoes the transformation. And so that is where I've been on the fence about it, is because I think I could put forward something that's better and more productive than some of those vendors that are out there that would lead HR astray less. But I actually tend to agree with your logic, and that's the reason why I haven't done it. And so that's why, I don't know, that's why I've been on the fence about it.
So I don't think you're giving HR folks enough credit.
I never will.
I know, and I fall in that camp quite a bit as well. But I've had some really thoughtful conversations with CHROs and CLOs recently about how the unsexy things are going to become the sexy things, right? So in the past, those models and fancy UIs and those types of things, that's where the money was. That's how they made their sale. That's not happening anymore. These leaders are really thoughtful about, okay, what are the unsexy things in the background that are going to save the organization money or move people toward the KPI that I need to move? And so I honestly think if people had a good model for what they were responsible for, like a way to think about it, and obviously it's going to be slightly different for every organization, but what we've done is our best guess based on the conversations that we've had. If people have that, then all kinds of things can start to hang off of it, right? You can start talking about how other organizations have done AI and whether it works within your organization, and what how you would create an ROI or understand the investment in that, rather than just a shiny UI. So I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. I just think it underestimates some of the HR leaders that we're talking to.
And I would add to it that I would think that what we're going to put out here in the next week or so, you could, and we may, I'm not going to promise, we may do a version of it that's like, okay, if this is the state of your world, these are probably whatever the 3 or 5 areas that are the most prime for disruption, given the nature of the type of work that they do, highly repeatable, rules-based, blah, blah, blah.
People love that stuff.
Well, but it is useful though. It's like, okay, yep. So we're going to work through all the priority zeros, and we're going to do those first. And then here are some of the downstream effects of what some of those things might be. And we'll work through that. And then we'll move to the next priority level, and we'll do that, and we'll do that. Because fundamentally what people don't want is a box. They want a plan.
But I mean, I guess that plays into what Cole was saying. I love this discussion because we're being yeah. It plays into what Cole's saying, because people, like a lot of people, do want a plan, and what we have never sold is the plan. We've never sold the plan,
but we've sold the questions.
We sold the questions and frameworks for thinking about what your plan should be, but we've never sold the plan.
Yeah.
And so I can see where he's coming from, why he would be hesitant to create a plan, because there isn't one for this. Of all the things, there isn't one for this. There isn't one for anything, but this one seems particularly.
Yeah, there used to be a phrase, no one ever got fired for going with IBM.
Yeah.
What a lot of leaders are looking for is, what is the de-risked plan that they can copy, lift and shift, that is taking the best learnings from other places, applying it to their particular organization, but they want a plan, and it needs to be at least somewhat cookie cutter. And I will hold firm to that, because I've seen it in every aspect of HR for as long as I've been in the field.
I don't think they get one.
So, I think that we can give them a model with questions and a rough order of operations based on objective information, which is what I said, which is how repeatable is something, and what scale at which are you doing it, and is it rules based? And that can get you started, but it gets you started. But that's what all these things do too. That's why so many people see that transformations go off the rails, is because they buy some standardized plan and they try to implement it. They're like, oh, that didn't work because my organization's different. Funny that way.
Funny how that works. No disagreements there. See, this is why we don't debate on the podcast, but it's all
good.
It's
way more fun. Come on.
It is cool. This is unnatural that you're not sparring with us.
I know. We keep on digging. We're like, come on, come on.
I know you're baiting me. I'm sitting here. I'm bobbing and weaving. I'm using my judo. I'm doing all the good things. But let's. Do you guys want to join me in Cole's Corner?
Yes,
sure.
Welcome to Cole's Corner. All right, let's do some random rapid fire to start out. I'm going to give you both a slight variation of this, since you're 2 human beings, not 1 human being. If you both weren't industry analysts, what would you have done with your career? Dani, would you go back to systems engineering or be a cyclist? Or Stacia, would you raise horses?
Oh, are these binary choices, or do we get to add to the drop-down list?
Go wherever you want to go. Just be rapid. Rapid is a rapid fire.
I'd be a historian.
All right.
I'd probably still be at Ford Motor Company designing cars.
Hey, I like that. quick why. Why Ford and why historian?
That's where I started my career. I think it's a good company, and it's very hard to leave once you sort of get sucked in there. So I would probably still be there if I weren't here.
There you go. Still drinking at the same bar, having the same beer with the same people. Good
Same
stuff.
people.
Driving the same cars.
Probably, yeah.
I like research. I like writing. I like deciphering patterns. And I think that there's incredible power in storytelling. So it's just another venue for doing the same stuff that I do now.
What's the place you've never been to that you most like to go, and why? Stacia, we'll start with you this time.
Oh, Alaska. I haven't been to Alaska yet. And because I like starkly different landscapes. I'm from Arizona originally, which is very different, and it's a landscape I've never been to.
There you go. Dani?
I'd have to say Portugal. We were going to do our honeymoon in Portugal and found ourselves with child shortly after we got married, and so we never made it to Portugal. We would like to someday get back to Portugal.
There you go. If you were a character in any book, TV show, or movie, who would you be and why? We'll start with Dani with this one.
Bingo.
Bingo, the board game, or Bingo?
Bingo Healer from the Bluey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bingo from Bluey. Okay.
Yeah, she's so cute. She's just adorable, and I've probably watched 200 or 300 hours worth of Blueys, and she's my favorite character.
All right. Spirit animal. There you
go. Princess Buttercup.
Ah.
Is that Mario?
No, that's from Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Oh, generational divide right there.
It's the I don't think you know what that word means. Like
yes. Inconceivable.
There you go. Well, why Princess Buttercup?
Because it's the best movie of all time. Okay. Obviously, there's adventure, there's romance, there's all sorts of things I can't say on your podcast. So it's the best movie ever.
All the good things.
All the good things.
All right. I got one big question for you guys. And Dani, feel free to throw learning into this one. What do you guys know about people analytics, HR technology, or HR more generally that no one else knows based on the research on the field that you've done?
You want like an existential sort of answer here? Or are you looking for like specific piece of data here?
Either. I actually learn more about you guys by how you answer, not by what you're answering.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, Cole. I'm afraid this is going to come back and bite me. I think the more I look at the systems that we design for people, the more certain I am of the importance of people, not just in the systems, but in organizations in general. I might be just getting soft in my old age, but I think any time Stacey's like, no, that's not true. But anytime I look at a system or a process, I'm like, okay, the biggest variable we have with this is people, and that's the biggest variable they should be. But we're treating the people as cogs in a machine rather than the thing that we're designing for. And yeah, that's the thing I know most.
What do you know, Stacia?
So much. No. Or so little, really, probably. Actually, that's probably the insight. Is the longer you study, the more you realize you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to answer it a little bit more directly, we can try to get ever more accurate in our predictions and assumptions with regard to people, particularly from a data perspective or from a OD perspective or a learning perspective. But ultimately, in addition to the economic reasons that organizations exist, they exist because people prefer to work together. We are fundamentally social creatures. And when you bring that social aspect to work, there will always be unexpected variations in behavior and performance. And to think that we can predict it all is, I think, a fool's errand.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's do some what am I reading. I think I'm going to combine the first two together because they say different things, but they're pretty similar in theme. I've gotten pretty good on the podcast of coming up with themes for these, so it just tickles me personally. I'm like, oh, I found a good theme. Anyway, nobody cares. I'm just gonna jump into this. So the first one is an article called "Quantifying Human AI Synergy" from Christoph Radel and Ben Weidman, and a guy named Kenneth Kavanaugh made a LinkedIn post about some of the findings from this article, which I'm going to distill down here pretty quickly. It's a pretty technical article talking about the differences between classical IRT, so item response theory, and Bayesian IRT, and how that using Bayesian IRT, you find some new and novel traits about AI users themselves. But the general theory of what they found is if you ever wanted to know what makes a good prompt engineer, the answer is having a theory of mind. So the theory of mind of like knowing another human, believing that they actually exist, that they have a mind, that you can interact with them, that there is logic and reason and even emotionality sometimes behind that other human being, which I thought was fairly interesting. And I think it dovetails well with this second one that I'm going to cover really quickly. And then I want to get your thoughts on both of them about it's a post from Anthropic. I try not to give Anthropic too much kudos on here because they get enough earned media themselves. And I've been giving them some of my own lately. But they found this really interesting correlation via some research that they've done called the Fourth Economic Index Report. It's a little dated now, but I think it's still worth covering. And they found a 0.92 correlation between the expertise in human education years and the sophistication of prompts used in Claude, and then that leading to a difference in the outcomes of the users, basically the quality of the output that the users were getting from these prompts. And I think this relates to, I can't remember, Dani, if it was you or Stacia earlier saying something about how, does it matter the user? I can't remember the exact phrase you used, but it doesn't matter like how good the user is. The hollow subject matter expert, I think is what you said. Yeah. And essentially what this research is showing is subject matter expertise does matter, and having a theory of mind of others matters as well. So how do you guys react to this in the world of, and within the context of the discussion that we've been having so far?
From my perspective, it reaffirms what I thought were the both opportunities and also potential challenges with AI. So I did actually read the post before we jumped on, and the gentleman, Kenneth, I believe, refers to like this technology is a different general purpose technology from electricity, which like you get the same electricity as I get, and some of these other technologies where actually the quality of the technology effectively varies based on your expertise level. When Gen AI first came out, one of my biggest concerns has been one, that we see uneven adoption of it by key demographic levels. So women versus men, people of different diverse backgrounds versus white folks, et cetera. And that those different adoption levels would compound over time, leading to fundamentally differently perceived performance outcomes. And this, for me, reinforces that is almost certainly what is going to happen. And it gives me real pause as we then think about the implications on performance management and performance assessment. Again, back to our hollowed out experts and our people who are using it in different ways, and what do they know, what do they not, et cetera. And I have very strong concerns about what the impact will then be on things like compensation and promotions of people from different backgrounds. Probably not where you're planning on me taking it, but that was what jumped out.
We're going there. Yeah. What do you think, Dani?
I mean, I agree with Stacia. I think maybe I'll just leave it there. I agree with Stacia. I think that there are real concerns about the if we are going to start rating people with their AI use in their job, there's a big difference between those that are classically educated and those that are not. It also makes me wonder, the people who created Anthropic are most likely classically educated, and so it's created to serve classically educated people, which just increases the cycle that we've been in since the beginning of time.
Yeah. I think there's like two competing ironies that are going on here. And this has kind of been a running theme on the podcast, which is the angle I thought you would go to, but you decided to go to a different angle, which is fine. Which is, should you go get a liberal arts education or should you get a technical education, right? And some data, like the theory of mind component, I think is best found through studying a liberal arts background. Mm-hmm. And whereas the Claude article is showing something along the lines traditional technical education, you're going to get better in prompts the more subject matter expertise you have in a particular area. And that is, again, to your point, Stacia, it's going to compound over time. It might create some disparate outcomes, but it's going to compound. I think we can all agree on that, right? But there's the second irony, which is the people who are the most educated tend to be the ones that are getting disrupted the quickest by AI too. And so, like, if you look at a lot of the research that's been coming out about, what occupations is AI going to disrupt, and the earliest, it's usually knowledge workers, more generally, not non-knowledge workers. And knowledge workers also tend to have the highest education levels as well. And so there's like these two great ironies that are going on here. Like, should you study a liberal arts and that's going to take you to the future because you have the theory of mind, or should you get the technical education? But if you get the technical education, are you actually going to be unemployable because AI is going to take your job first? And so I think this is just an interesting point that we're at.
I mean, that is true if the system that we have is the system that we'll have in the future, right? So those people will be displaced if they continue to work for law firms and Fortune 500 organizations in the systems that we currently have. The research, as I understand it, is that people are better able to use the technology because it was created for people like them to use that technology. And so maybe it's a change in mind or a change in sort of emphasis in education that we need to be looking at. We shouldn't be looking at creating worker bees, which we have been in the United States, at least for the last however many years, 150 years. We should be looking at back to the, I don't know what
they were created to go work on the assembly line.
Exactly. Ford. And that's what we've done. That's the education system that we currently have in place. But if we switched it, giving them that formal education with a bent more toward entrepreneurship, how would that change things? What would that look like?
Yeah.
Or a set of knowledge that they come out with, right? Like, because what I think that is showing is that you have whether that's explicitly what it's showing or what it's kind of directionally showing, is that you have a knowledge base that you can use to, increase better prompts, et cetera, et cetera. Having graduated with 2 liberal arts degrees and having done a master's in yet another, I can tell you that, like, when I left college, the biggest, hardest thing was that I didn't have a base of knowledge from which to go. Like, Dani is still very much so an engineer. And so she had like, okay, this is where I go and apply this knowledge and skill set that I built. I had a set of skills, which was I could analyze the text out of anything and read faster than anyone and pull stuff together. But anything, to what end, right? I was like a little LLM wandering around looking for an application. But had I, and part of the reason I like HR is because I have like an area of expertise. I have like a knowledge match to my skill. But
I don't know. Like, I think formal education is just a thing, right? Stacia and I are at the exact same place, even though I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering and Stacia has a master's degree in history. We're in the same place. We both have MBAs, sure, but we're in the exact same place. I developed sort of the making connections piece that she got from her liberal arts education, and she's developed some more of the technical stuff that she got that she didn't get in her liberal arts education. And so we're in the same place. And so while I think formal education is an important thing, I don't think it's the be all end all.
I'm realizing I'm a broken record because I think the last 2 conversations I've had publicly with you guys have collapsed it onto just this point of, well, I have an MBA, but I'm a this. I'm like, oh God, we're having the same conversation again.
Yeah, you can cut it if you want. But
it's my fault.
I think though that in all of this, what's the most valuable skill set? Learning.
Yeah.
Learning something new, learning how to learn something new, being curious.
Well, I mean, yes. And yeah, I mean, I think that's true, but I don't even know that it's learning. I think it's more curiosity. And I don't know if that's a skill, but curiosity is what got you where you are and where I am, and probably what got Cole where he is, right? It's not that somebody taught us how to learn. It's that we are naturally curious about the world, and that's the world that we pursue. And I think as I think about my 5-year-old and what he needs moving forward, it isn't necessarily liberal arts versus engineering. It's the ability to adapt and be curious about what's going on around him.
Yeah, I had a professor in graduate school that said, what I'm teaching you gives you a license to learn. And essentially, like, what they had deduced is that it's not that people can't learn. It's that most people just don't feel like they have permission to go learn something new that they're not an expert in, or that they don't have a background in, and that they just wanted to kind of grant everybody that the royal you of permission. You all have the ability to go and do this, which I thought was pretty neat, which actually is a pretty decent segue into our last article about career success. And so this is from the annual review of organizational psychology and organizational behavior, an article called Understanding Contemporary Career Success, a critical review by Scott Siebert and some other folks. And Tomasz Chmara-Music does a pretty good job summarizing this. So I'm just going to read it. It says, why are some people more successful than others? Career success, the evolving sequence of work experiences over time, can be understood objectively by things like, tangible things like pay, job level, occupational status, subjectively in terms of how people evaluate their careers and towards their goals, their value, their satisfaction, meaning, and growth. And it's a widely researched area. Things like human capital, their education and experience matter, but less than we think. Stronger and more consistent generalizable drivers include social capital, so your sponsorship and networks, stable individual differences such as personality traits like conscientiousness, extroversion, and emotional stability, cognitive ability, thinking things like IQ, career relevant political and interpersonal skills like EQ and political skills, internal labor market dynamics, so the timing of your promotion, your early career momentum, and things like that. And of course, where you are. So whether you're born in Switzerland or South Sudan can highly impact your career success. It goes on and talks a little bit more, but do you guys have any thoughts about this? Like things that affect career success more generally, or maybe things that impacted you in your own career?
I think that's a really short-sighted article. Just the premise is really short-sighted, that career success means moving up a ladder. I don't think that's true. I think people make decisions all over the place based on their context that they're in. And so to define what career success looks like by that model, I think is really short-sighted. I don't know how I don't know that if you took a look at all of the people that they used in their database and asked them if they felt they had career success, if they'd say yes or no, that aligning it with what he says is career success.
Yes, and I mean, he does point out that it can be measured objectively or subjectively, but then he goes on to say, basically, we only measured it objectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But ultimately, what it says to me, it's same old, same old. It's not what you know, it's who you know, right? Like, it's basically using the career advice that my dad gave me when I was 18, is what that paper says. If you measure your success objectively with promotions, etc.
Well, let me ask you guys. So, do you think this is going to be valid in 3 years? Do you think AI is going to mess that up? That's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's a good question. Tyler Weeks was a recent guest on the podcast, and he had done some research that showed that there was this like little blip of time where applying to a job versus like your network was actually the most optimal way of getting a job. And that seems to be ending. So it was like, in time immemorial to like the year 2000, it was all who you knew, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was this small window of time where you post and prayed into an ATS and eventually you got a job, right? And then that era seems to be ending with AI. And so again, I don't know where he got his data or what have you, but it was quite interesting to reflect on. It's like, is like this, my whole adult life been this like statistical aberration of just this moment where you could apply to a job and go and get it. And then that era seems to be ending, and what the new era is, who knows? But I don't know. Stacia, do you have any thoughts?
Well, to Dani's question, I think, no, I don't think that the AI changes this, because the knowledge is the cheap thing, as it were. But I mean, there's an argument for that, right? And if you're got people you like working with, or people who all of our biases or whatever, I feel like there will be, I believe we are probably moving towards a world where there is more expertise flattening, and people will assume that you can pick up knowledge, and some of the other intangibles will be perceived as more important to making selection. Colt, what do you think?
I think a lot about this. You guys know the concept of the power law, right?
Yep.
I think non-statistical people assume it means like the powerful rule, might is right. It's like, no, it's a statistical distribution. That's all a power law is. And but there is like this thing I've been calling in my mind the tyranny of the power law, which is essentially, well, let me kind of go back. I remember in undergrad, or maybe it was grad school, there was this famous book by Tom Friedman called "The World Is Flat."
Yep.
Do you guys remember that?
Yep.
And essentially, it was right and wrong. It was wrong at the time, but right the closer you get to the present moment. Which was, again, it's been a long time since I read it, but I think the general thesis was, if you're not the top person in the world at your particular field, the world is flattening so much that you're not just competing with whoever's down the road from you. You're competing in a global talent market. And, at that point, if you're not, in the top 1% of what you're doing, you're going to be unemployable or something along those lines. It was probably, I'm being hyperbolic, but that's what I recollect from it. And so what I always thought is, like, that's essentially the tyranny of the power law. If you're not the best in the entire world, you're essentially unemployable. And I think the more AI proliferates, the more that seems to be, there is this flattening, but there's also this variance increasing happening at the same time, where there's a small number of highly, highly impactful individuals, and then everyone else is essentially useless, or at least can't make an impact as much as those highly influential individuals. And that's what I've been calling like kind of the tyranny of the power law. That seems to be what's happening in my mind.
Okay. I mean, I just keep on going back to what does making an impact mean? And I don't know, like, what are the rules that we're using to judge success in these scenarios? I don't know that they're the right ones.
But they're not. That's why I bring on What Am I Reading? Because it's fun fodder for discussion. This is good stuff.
I do want to return to that, because I and somebody else on LinkedIn recently was writing about power law versus normal distribution of performance, and but their position was like, do we really think that people's performance on the job follows a completely different distribution than pretty much every other type of performance that we see? Like, there's almost, it is very rarely a power law. So for those of you who are just listening, we're talking about, like, do you have a hill in the middle and you got like 50% on one side of the hill and 50% on the other? Or are we talking about it's basically flat and then you have a spike at the very end where those people are actually making an impact? And so I think it's really easy to want to say that the power law is going to win, but that assumes a frictionless system, which is the opposite of what we all exist in. That is like, no company cares that you live within driving distance to the office, which we all saw. People care, still care. That assumes that we have no cultural biases in terms of how work gets done, or where it gets done, or to what quality level, or whatever. Again, not the case. That assumes that time zones don't exist. And God love you, I'm in California. I will tell you they exist, particularly to Europe. And so it's just not, I don't know. It doesn't all add up for me. That goes back to your point. What have I learned? And what I feel like I have learned is that fundamentally we are social animals, and we like working with other people, and we like working with people we like and people we know. And I don't think that is ever going to change.
I should bring you guys back on more often. This is fun, because you reminded me of, I actually forgot. I write so many things, I forgot what I write. I wrote this article last year called a global wage rate is coming, and it's I have this riff called "Everyone Gets Paid the Same." Nobody likes hearing about it. I think it's brilliant. No one else does, but I'm really invested in it.
Obviously.
But I was using this theoretical framework for how everyone gets paid the same to show how the same people who are complaining about return to office mandates are actually the ones that are benefiting from job security from return to office mandates, because that's keeping them from having to compete with the global workforce that in the time zones and the geographical location and the stereotypes and all the things that you mentioned, Stacia, that the things that those are considered unsavory in their mind, and they're also in contributing to their job security. So I think it's fascinating discussion.
Agreed.
Yeah. You guys have any questions? I know you may or may not have seen this in the prep email, but any questions for me or anything you wanted to talk about today before we wrap up?
Here's my question for you. What AI are you playing around with right now? What are you building?
Yeah, I think the thing I've been talking about this a little bit lately, kind of partially because job changes actually, and I want to kind of like set a new normal. So, do you guys ever hear of take back your life? You ever heard this philosophy? All right.
Yep.
And it was common when I started my career, and so I found ways of using Microsoft tools to essentially create my own operating system so that I never forget things. I'm actually an extremely forgetful person, but I'm highly conscientious, and so I'm able. And I've been utilizing that methodology, and because of AI, it's starting to finally break. It's been a very durable methodology for my career, and so what I'm trying to do is to figure out how I can use the combination of three things to recreate, take back my life using Notion, Zapier, and Claude Cowork. And so I'm on the journey, but not far enough into it to comment to say if I've fully accomplished my objective. But my goal is to, if you utilize Take Back Your Life, I have a modified version that I just use for me that's kind of been sticky for my own career. But there's parts of it that I've never been able to fully automate. And it's a lot of copy and pasting, right? And I'm like, I could do all of this if I just utilized Cowork and Zapier and then had Notion as a core platform rather than using things like OneNote, which is what I've historically used, which doesn't really integrate with Cowork. And so I'm like, if I use Notion, if I'm willing to decouple from the Microsoft suite, I can almost fully automate all the last few steps that are manual. And then I can get to this hopeful nirvana. I'm not there yet, but that is what I'm focusing on right now. Does that answer your question?
It does. The reason Dani and I smiled is that we just moved our whole organization to Google to achieve this nirvana. So
yeah,
we get it. Yep.
Yeah, you get it. Well, you guys are amazing. I don't know if it comes through on the podcast. I have so much love for you guys. Like, I think you're awesome. And the fact that we can do this, like, I don't know. I have a rule, like I don't debate with the guests, but I do try to create an environment. Hopefully you felt that, where like people can have these kind of discussions, even difficult ones. And hopefully like this is a really popular episode for that reason. But if people want to reach out and find out more about RedThread and your research, or join your community, or listen to your podcast, where can they find all the things?
They can go to redthreadresearch.com. I also want to mention we have an invitation-only summit coming up, which you attended last year.
Oh my God, I forgot this. Okay, this was a part of the agenda, but you guys derailed me. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's our fault. Yeah? Oh. Isn't this your podcast?
I know. I gave Dani the reins before you showed up. I'm like, Dani, this is your podcast.
Whatever. They were theoretical reins. They weren't really. I had no power. We both know
that. Anyway, so we have RedThread Summit, which is at Snowbird. It is a working experience, if you will, for senior HR leaders. Dani and I interview every single person who comes to make sure that we get the right folks into the room. And what we're really trying to do is unravel some of these questions about the future. So we're bringing in, again, Lisa K. Solomon from the D School, and Jeffrey Rogers, who is her partner in crime and has the best hair in the century, and also is just an incredible human being. And we're going to work through some different ways of thinking about the future, some different tools than we did last year, different skill sets that people get. And the idea is to come out with kind of a fresh, energized take on how we're all going to tackle these really big challenges in front of us, and an incredible network and community of folks who are going to be there to do it with you.
like, you guys are not doing this justice at all. It's an amazing conference. They're like, it's not, I don't even know if you can call it a conference.
It's not really a conference.
It's like workshops, activities. There's really no speakers per se.
No.
There's no like, vendor pitches or whatever. It's just like the smartest, most influential people meeting with the other smartest, most influential people to tackle the biggest problems in a high trust, closed door, invite only environment that you can only find through RedThread. I don't even know if I'm going to get invited back next year because I might not be important enough. So I think this is so delightful that you guys have this, and I think it's going to snowball. I think you're going to be having to turn people away left and right. And I just think it's the greatest thing.
Thank you, Cole. We should have you do the pitch. I mean, you basically just did, so thank you.
Hey, I'll clip it up for you. You can send it
in. We'll tell our marketing guy.
All right. Well, let's take this plane home, but reach out to RedThread community, check out Snowbird, the conference. Workplace Stories, amazing podcast. Check out the 2 episodes of Cole Napper on there. They're fantastic. You get me to debate with you guys. It's fun.
It is fun.
This is really good stuff. But any parting words before we wrap this thing up?
No, just Cole, we appreciate you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the debate. And we respect you so much. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with your host, Cole Napper, and today's guests, Stacia Garr and Dani Johnson. Thanks for joining me, Dani and Stacia.